to Biblical Psychology, the channel that combines psychological ideas with scripture to help you respond more effectively to the promises in the Bible with regards to mental health. And today we're going to take a look at the topic overweight. And for those of you who've tuned in our previous episodes, you may have come across the episode on substance misuse, where we did touch on overweight, but because of the prevalence of this difficulty in our communities, we thought we'd devote an entire episode to it. So how is overweight defined? So the World Health Organization defines overweight as a condition of abnormal or excessive fat accumulation to the extent that health may be impaired. So what does it mean? What is impairment in our health with regards to overweight? The Centre for Disease Control and Prevention defines health risks associated with overweight as high blood pressure, high blood cholesterol, heart disease, stroke, diabetes, surprisingly certain types of cancer, arthritis, and breathing problems. And one way as to how overweight has been operationalized is by what's called the body mass index, or commonly known as BMI. And this is a measure that uses height and weight to work out if a person's weight is healthy. And I'll take you through the different classifications of body mass index. And you'll see a diagram come up on the screen of 6 individuals of varying weight, and beneath their feet you'll see the different categories of BMI associated with this weight. So a person who is underweight will have a BMI of less than 18.5. A person of normal weight will have a BMI of 18.5 to 24.9. A person deemed as overweight will have a BMI of 25 to 29.9. And a person who's obese, and we have 3 categories to define obesity. So a person who's obese will have a BMI of 30 or higher. And class 1 obesity is within the range 30 to 34.9. Class 2 obesity is within the range of 35 to 39.9. And class 3 obesity, which is the highest level of obesity, is more than 40. So what might be the causes of overweight? Simply put, overweight is an imbalance between energy intake and expenditure. So why does this happen? I mean, we all know that increased exercise and limiting our dietary intake can help maintain a healthy weight. But why is it that some of us have difficulty in controlling this? Well, I believe that the answer to this is in psychological factors that can impact upon how we approach eating food. And I'm going to talk you through an example of a formulation of understanding why someone might overeat from a psychological perspective. So in the first top square, which is entitled Problematic Thoughts, somebody might have thoughts where I eat because I'm tired and stressed. So they've set themselves an internal rule that whenever they're tired and stressed, they're going to eat. The next thought is, I'm addicted to sweets. So someone has created this internal rule to tell themselves that they are addicted to sweets. They've got no control over it, and therefore whenever they see sweets, they will just eat them. When I eat at the restaurant, I have no control. So someone will convince themselves that they just love restaurant food, and they use it as an opportunity to eat more perhaps than they should. This then leads sort of looking at the box below that, it then leads the person to start to engage in unhealthy eating behaviours. So they might eat large amounts of food in social situations because they've set this rule that that's the time when they will do that. They might start snacking and eating junk foods and eating large portions of food. And they convince themselves that when they do that, it makes them feel good, they feel gratified, they feel better and relaxed, and they just enjoy eating with others. And just looking at the square on the left-hand side entitled antecedent stimuli, there might be certain circumstances which make the individual more vulnerable to eating in an uncontrolled manner. So having too much junk food at home, having too much social eating occasions, and non-eating stimuli such as anxiety, tiredness and stress might also make them vulnerable to overeating. So this is the vicious cycle that's set up. And so now we're going to take a look at some verses from the Bible to see the extent to which psychological ideas are aligned to Scripture. So the first verse or passage is taken from Proverbs 23, 20 to 21. And this states, "Be not among drunkards or among gluttonous eaters of meat, for the drunkard and the glutton will come to poverty, and slumber will clothe them in rags." Now, let's try to unpack what that verse is trying to say. So with regards to eating, what Scripture is saying is that to be glutton or to eat too much will lead us to come to poverty. And what is poverty? It's basically being poor, and someone who is, succumb to overeating might make it the heart of their concern, and they're totally focused on food. And if you're totally focused on something like food, it means then that you become vulnerable to making wrong decisions, because most of your decision making is driven by what you can eat, and you lose control, and you might not make appropriate decisions when they're needed, and so you just miss out on activity that might be useful to you. And it talks about slumber will clothe them in rags. So I think that speaks a lot about the physical consequences of eating, because if we reflect on our eating, often when we've eaten, we're feeling quite tired and we could just go off to sleep. And what does it do? I mean, if you fall asleep on a full stomach, it means then that you're more likely to increase weight because you're not exercising. Again, you'll miss out on doing productive activity because you're sleeping. So we can see how that relates to slumber and poverty. take a look at Proverbs 23 verse 2, and it states, "And put a knife to your throat if you are given to appetite." Now that's a very sobering verse, and it uses the metaphor of slitting your throat, and actually saying that it's suggesting that it's actually better if you slit your throat than to be given into gluttony or to eating food. And that's really such a powerful message, and it gives us some indication as to the seriousness of how overeating and gluttony can have a negative impact upon our lives. And if we read Proverbs 25 verse 16, it states, "If you have found honey, eat only enough for you, lest you have your fill of it and vomit." Now I find it so fascinating, the choice of metaphors that the Bible uses to describe and help us to understand situations. So we all know that honey is very sweet, and if we're honest, a lot of us like the taste of sugar and cakes and sweet things, and it's probably more difficult to resist having those lovely delicacies. But what the Bible is saying in that context is only eat enough. And so no matter how much we enjoy something, we're encouraged to maintain our control and just eat enough. And looking at Philippians 3, 18 to 19, he states that they are the enemies of the cross of Christ, whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly. And what that verse is highlighting is that when we give in to our appetite and overeating, we're actually placing food as a god with a small g. And it's a kind of form of idolatry, and the Bible does caution us against engaging in idolatry. And when we look at Proverbs 28 verse 7, it states, "He who keeps the law is a discerning son, but he who is a companion of gluttons humiliates his father." So that's another angle where the Bible is saying that a discerning son will keep the law, and someone who's discerning is very watchful and vigilant. And a watchful and vigilant person is likely to make the right decisions about situations. But he who is a companion of gluttons humiliates his father. And so it's kind of highlighting there that people who engage in overeating can also have a negative impact upon us and cause us to also engage in this activity. So in summary, I think overall what both psychological models and the Bible are advocating is for us to exercise due control of our eating. And of course there are psychological factors underpinning our eating, and sometimes it can hamper the degree of control that we can have. So I remember once working with someone who grew up in a home where there was lots of emphasis on staying slim, and this rule within the family home came into direct conflict with the little girl as she was in the home, because whenever she did enjoy her food, it created a lot of conflict. And by the time she left home, she was relieved in a way, because she didn't have any commentary about her eating from family members. And so over time she had developed this overeating habit, because she constantly heard this voice telling her that she shouldn't enjoy that, and she felt that eating things that she enjoyed was something that she had to do in secret. But the difficulty with that is that her secret habit became quite established, and she used to seek out times when she could be on her own to eat, and it led to overeating. And it wasn't until she received some therapy to help her understand what was going on to break that vicious cycle. So if you're somebody who's having difficulty in breaking that cycle of overeating, then psychological treatment is definitely one way in which you can do that. Or if you belong to a good church where they believe in the power of prayer, that would be another way in how you can overcome this problem. So that's all that I'm going to talk about today on overeating, and I hope that you were able to receive some nuggets of information to assist you along your journey of recovery. Next time we're going to be looking at tinnitus. So that leads me to say, don't forget to subscribe, because that way you'll be notified of all the future episodes. Bye bye.